We all love to blame AI for boring content, especially in B2B marketing, right? But I can tell you for a fact that most content is boring before AI even touches it. And trust me, I've been in those meetings. So here are 3 reasons why your B2B content is boring, plus ideas on how to fix it. And stick around for number 3 because it's a structural problem that actually has nothing to do with your skills as a writer. And I've seen it repeated over and over and over again on B2B marketing teams. I've got a great horror story that you will probably relate to. The first reason content is boring is because it's content that's created only for robots. If you're too focused on creating for the algorithms, you're not creating for the people. And when that happens, you're basically missing out on what makes content interesting in the first place. As a reader, you can feel when content is meant to just hit keywords and check some boxes. And funny enough, search engines and AI platforms are actually shifting away from recommending or citing this kind of content. So here's your solution. Create for people first. Obviously, you need your technical basics in place to show up in Google AI search or in a social media algorithm. But beyond whatever technical requirements are necessary for your channel, your content should focus on people. I do this by spending a large part of my time on audience research. Here's how I use AI tools to do this.
So I created an audience research prompt, and I'll link it below so that you can check it out as well. Basically what it does is it goes through forums, social media, YouTube comments, and other discussions online to see what people are saying about a topic. It'll scope out where it should search, then it gives you voice of the customer, pain points, and a little bit of an idea of how popular this topic is. So let's run it through Gemini, and we're going to use the deep research tool here. Let's say I want to talk about how to do local SEO, and my target audience would be small business owners or local business owners. Let's run it through and see. Obviously, you can use different AI tools for this. You can also use Claude or ChatGPT. This just seems to be giving me the best answer right now, but that may change. Let's start. Well, that took an eternity. Here we go. Let's see some of what it gets up with. And of course, I will take this with a pinch of salt, but it gives us some nice verbatim quotes. It gives us the links to those quotes. Obviously, I would want to check these sources, but it's a nice place to start from when you're doing audience research.
Boring content cause number 2 is content that just regurgitates what's already out there. Your content may be fine. Actually, it might be just as good at what's already ranking. And that's part of the problem. We don't need more articles, more newsletters, more social media posts just telling us the same things we could read anywhere. Actually, AI is amazing at putting that together. It can analyze, understand, and regurgitate what already exists in a fascinating summary, and it actually does it in a way that's tailored to each individual. You don't need to keep doing the same thing. Here's what you do instead. EEAT. This is part of Google's standards for content quality, and it stands for experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. Basically, can you prove that what you're writing about is from actual experience? Are you adding a unique slice of expertise that nobody else has? Does what you're saying line up with known facts? And are you a trustworthy source of information? As marketers, it's rare that we have enough real-world experience ourselves to speak authoritatively on a subject. That's why the main part of my work as a content marketer is to talk to people with that experience. Here's an example. One client that I was working for was a SaaS company that builds secure banking transactions. This is a whole world that I've never stepped into before. So I felt a little bit like Alice in Wonderland falling into the rabbit hole. So I spent some time on calls with the CEO. I did research so that I could ask better questions on those calls. And together, we created some really cool content for that industry, something that pulled from his expertise and created something new, something valuable for that industry. So use your experts, insert real expertise and strong opinions into your content, because that's the kind of content that AI is citing right now. Of course, to get strong, opinionated content, the more people, the better, right? No. That brings us to boring content cause number 3, content by committee. This is that structural problem that has nothing to do with your skills as a writer. It's a problem of having too many cooks in the kitchen, and it's the best way to ruin perfectly good content. How many people touched the last piece of content that you worked on before it went live? I want you to be honest here. And I promised you a horror story, so here it is. I was once working on a marketing team where every piece of content had to go through another content marketer for edits, the head of content, that's pretty normal, the director of marketing, the CEO, and sometimes the CFO. Everyone had opinions. That's what happens when you give everyone a Google Doc. Everyone was leaving comments all over the place. All 3 people on the content marketing team were making direct edits within the doc based on these comments. So not only was every piece of content a rambling mess of repeated points and self-serving product insertions, but because this process took so long, we actually went 3 months without publishing anything. And the team got so burned out, honestly, it dissolved. That's a story for another day. But this was all before AI existed, so that wasn't the problem. Although, of course, AI can also exacerbate this problem. But if this situation is starting to feel a little too familiar, here are some ways to fix it. First of all, be clear on who is actually involved in a piece and why. Not everyone who wants to have a say should get one. You need to be super clear about why each individual has access to that Google Doc and what value they are bringing into that process. Another way to kind of pull this together is to pull it into a project management tool, probably one that you're already using for your content calendar, and put in actual named steps. Draft, edit, final approval. Assign those to a person so nobody's guessing what the next step is or who still needs to look at something. And finally, this is my favorite point, honestly, pick just one person to be a buffer between the writer and leadership. This was something that I had at a time that was a little bit tricky with a marketing team that I was working on, and having that buffer was super useful for me as a writer because I didn't have to deal directly with C-suite. They were giving feedback, and in this case, the head of content, he was acting as a buffer between C-suite and the writers. That way your writers don't wake up with 15 comments from people they've never met in a Google Doc. Obviously, this stuff is not easy to put into practice, especially if your executive team is pretty insistent on being involved. I've been there. I know how that works. But it is important for them to see that you're confident in the work that you're doing and your ability to produce content without all of this nitpicking. If someone from the executive team needs to be involved, let them, but make sure that there are boundaries and that there's a very clear time frame as well. AI can definitely write boring content, but that also doesn't mean that human written content equals interesting or engaging. If you're struggling with boring B2B content, try the tips we've talked about in this video and let me know how it went in the comments. And if you want to learn more about B2B content marketing in the age of AI, you should probably subscribe. See you in the next one.